Kick it up here. Alrighty, I think we're fixing to go, guys. Mic check, mic check. Let me hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm good.
Yeah, if you need to adjust that so it's comfortable for you, do whatever you need to do. You can slide it.
If you want to hold the mic yourself, you can do that.
Take it out and hold it. If that's more comfortable for you, you can do that too.
Okay. No,
that way you're not trying to
yeah.
forget to lean into it. I know it's much better to kind of get kicked back and relax. So if you're gonna be sitting back relaxing and talking, go ahead and get your mic set up for that.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that everybody's can cool. They don't have to turn the volume up super loud to hear you and then get their ears blown out when me and Anthony talk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Keeping that. And basically what I'm looking at right here, you see this little audio thing? I want to try to keep it around to, right underneath 10 decibels or so.
Okay.
So if you look up there and you're like way down here like this, it ain't picking you up right.
Okay.
You can't hear it, but we can. Sorry.
Oh.
Limitations on equipment and all that. All right. Alrighty. Y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Unframed of Mind Show, where we have uncomfortable conversations without a condom. And as you can see today, we got kind of a full studio here. We got our longtime friend of the show, Uncle Hotep over here. Yeah. Mentu Hotep is what you went by. Yeah,
right, correct.
I can't believe I remember that. I apologize. But yeah, so basically he's going to tell us today about some of the cult origins of Good Friday, of Easter, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to talk about the Notre Dame Cathedral a little bit, and we're also going to talk about Cher and her sudden change of heart on immigration policy. All right.
You're listening to the Unframe of Mind Show, the place to have the most mind-stretching, unprotected, intellectual intercourse of your life. Your host, Daniel Wagner, battles the forces of evil by lobbing fiery balls of truth, reason, and evidence over safe room walls.
All right. And welcome back to another episode, guys.
Welcome back.
I'm your host, Daniel Wagner.
And co-host Anthony.
All right. And as we said just a minute ago, we got our friend Mentu Hotep joining us today to educate us. You said you got the research, you got the proof and the evidence and everything. You got all your materials ready to go?
I've got the research.
All right. So we even got him set up with a nice little whiteboard over here. We'll kick it on over there and let him write on there, so that's what you'll be seeing there once that comes in. So we'll make that happen. At any rate, so I wanted to start off a little bit by talking about Cher, just to kind of loosen up a little bit. I don't know if you guys saw the tweet that Cher put out talking about.
Yeah, I tagged you in that post on Facebook. Yeah.
Did you see this?
No, I didn't.
So Cher is traditionally kind of a very anti-Trump type person, right?
Right.
Out of LA, real
liberal
into the whole liberal thing. And she decides to post to Trump that, listen, we can't take on all these immigrants into our sanctuary city.
We'll explain as to why.
We're not, Trump's saying, listen, why don't we just send them all to the sanctuary cities? That's where they want to go anyway, and they're wanting them anyway, right? And the Cher's like, well, we can't even take care of our own people. We got all these vets and stuff. Like, we can't take on all these people.
Right.
And it's like, for once, I agree with you. That makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
It's a different tone than what she was singing 2 years ago. When she was talking about, giving these immigrants a place to go and how we should bring them in. Now, all of a sudden, 2 years later, almost 3 years later, it's a lot different than what she was, what she was expressing.
Yeah, she says, I understand helping struggling immigrants, but my city, Los Angeles, isn't taking care of its own. What about the 50,000 plus citizens who live on the streets? People who live below poverty line and hungry. If my state can't take care of its own, many are vets, how can it take care of more? Donald Trump says, I finally agree. James Woods says that Cher awakens to reality. Yeah, it's pretty exciting just to see, because you see these on the street interviews all the time where they'll walk up to people and say, hey, listen, we've got this immigration issue and whatnot, and people are like, yeah, we should bring them on in, let him stay with us, and they're like, well, listen, I got this guy right here with me that just came in and he needs a place to stay. Can he stay at your place tonight? People are like, oh no, we can't do that. It's It's like, well, wait a minute.
Well, I think the tone of the conversation changes when you start to realize that the problem is now coming into your neck of the woods, and you're starting to see what they've been dealing with at the southern border. And as I mentioned before, it's not that we're being inhumane or not thinking about the immigrants that are coming in. It's you have to deal with the crisis as is. And because it's been pertained just to strictly the southern border, we're not seeing it on the outskirts. And I think with Trump doing this, it's given people the opportunity to start to see what is actually going on if you bring those people in by the truckloads, and that can give you more of an idea of what's really going on. So, it's just one of those situations where sometimes you have to make a legitimate change in order for people to see where you're coming from and the stance in which you are trying to approach this from.
Right.
And I think that's the idea behind what Trump was trying to do is like, look, you guys aren't paying attention to what's going on at the border, and this is something that we've been dealing with for years. So we're going to start bringing it to your neck of the woods and see what we've been dealing with and what the border patrol agencies have been dealing with.
It's almost like we hear people talking about how, and feel free to jump in whenever you want.
Yeah.
We'll just keep going.
No, it's fine.
We won't wait for you to talk. You gotta jump. You gotta like start elbowing and throwing in. Anyway, it's almost like you're sitting there at work and there's people outside going, there's all these unemployed people out here, all these unemployed people.
Yeah.
We got to give them jobs. It's like, all right, I guess we'll bring them on in. We'll give them jobs. And then when you come in and you start wondering why everybody else's pay is going down, to stay competitive, there's too many people in the field now. And now the same resources that were supporting a few now has to be spread out amongst more. And now nobody wins.
Right.
It's like, that's just not sustainable. Like not in the long haul, especially when you're talking about a world population of 7+ billion people, and the vast majority of them are very interested in moving into the United States in one fashion or another. Like we just can't possibly take on that much.
Well, and as we've said on the show before, we don't have anything against immigrants. The issue that we've always had is the illegal immigrants coming in and not going about it the proper way. When we had our friend Maya on the show, she lives 11 miles from the border, and she was giving us descriptive details of what was actually going on down there and kind of gave us some insight on what's really going on. It's one thing for us to sit here in Tennessee to say something and not really be involved in what's going on at the southern border. So because we've done the research and the education ourselves, it's given us a different perspective on what's really going on. It's nice to see that Cher has now a different opinion on the situation, and it's good that she's thinking for herself.
No, not really.
Unless you think that she's just buying for whatever it is that she's wanting.
Honestly, I think it's more of a now this is starting to affect my neck of the woods, so now it's time to say something.
So you think it's that?
I really
kind
do.
of. Okay.
I really do, because she's back on the rampage, talking shit about Trump.
Is
again.
she?
It's like, I'm not saying she has to like agree with the guy or like him or nothing like that. But I mean, if it was like a more of a consistent viewpoint that she's had, and not just a sudden switch, and then back into the other, like that doesn't make sense. It doesn't flow with her normal tweet stream. Basically, is what I'm saying. So I guess I'd be surprised, but I think it's kind of just par for the course. You see people do it all the time.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Just right back to their normal shit. So you guys saw what happened in Notre Dame Cathedral over the last couple of days?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Fire, right?
Ain't that some shit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking.
What's the cause? Did they ever say?
Well, that's what I want to talk about tonight is the potential causes, because they were already like, it wasn't like the fire wasn't even out yet, and they're already saying, well, it's not this and it's not terrorism. It's not that's an investigation that takes months sometimes to put together the pieces and figure out what happened, And they're sitting there like, oh, automatically, nope, not a terrorist attack, not arson, not nothing like that. It's probably just an accident, freak of nature, just. And like the more I'm like listening to different viewpoints on this, and I'm like, I'm hearing a lot of stuff. I'm hearing that it took place at 7 p.m. in the evening. All right, that's right after the place closes for the night for tours and stuff like that. Right. So this was after the work day. Like the construction crew wasn't even there anymore. Like this was like tours and shit. Right after they closed, 5 or 6 minutes after it closed, this thing goes off, and they're sitting there trying to put the fire out and whatnot. Certain pieces have been saved. And then, like I said, before it's out, they're already saying it's not terrorism, it's not this and that. But what they're also not saying is they're not pointing to the complete cone of silence the media's had about desecrations to Catholic churches in the area that have been going on for weeks and weeks. I think they're talking about 2 per week at least of some kind of desecration, some kind of vandalism, like up to and including them taking human feces and smearing them over the relics inside the church just to send a message. It's got a lot to do with the whole Muslim immigration thing. They've got a lot of them coming in as well, and it's like not reported on.
Are they still fighting the government over there in France, the workers' unions? And
you talking about the yellow vest?
Right.
Yeah, that's been going on for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I almost honestly, in the midst of things, I was reporting on it. I forgot about it.
The yellow vest?
Yeah,
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
mean to because I was trying to keep up with it.
Yeah, because maybe.
I don't think it had anything to do with them necessarily. It wouldn't fit their
narrative. It just I don't know.
The MO.
yeah, because they were just pissed off about government intervention, raising taxes, and constant
right.
Emmanuel Macron over there is always, like they should not have voted him in first of all. But it's like, what the hell's going on? It just seems like it seems awful suspicious that this should happen. Like, this building has been here for over 800 years. It was brought down for the most part during the French Revolution.
Right.
They rebuilt it. It was brought down again during the World War II by the Nazis. They've rebuilt it again. This place has never been 100% destroyed, right? But as far as catching fire, like, they've got candles and shit in there all the time. They've got some of the strictest, highest fire safety codes in the world. This is like arguably one of the places you would make sure that you would have all the documentation, make sure you got everything safe. They got labor unions in there, that are working on this stuff, making sure that they've got somebody there for 3 hours after some welding's done to make sure that there's nothing's going to catch.
Right.
It's like, it just, you're going to tell me that on the holiest week in the Catholic religion,
Pretty ironic,
just out of nowhere,
Yeah.
the whole building's going to catch on fire.
Right.
I kept posting online. I said, is this Paris's 9/11?
Well, it's kind of like with down in
know.
Louisiana, you had that kid that the sheriff's son that basically had burnt 3 black churches to the ground. And this was recently, I think this was a couple of weeks ago. And it was just like, it was all arson. And we're seeing a rash of a lot of these things going on with churches here lately. And it's just not with Catholic. I mean, it's all demographics, but I'm still leaning
back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still leaning towards the fact that this was strictly arson. This was done intentionally, out of malice, for whatever the reason.
Yeah, and the fact that the media's covered it up so quick, like they were so fast.
Well, and here's
Fire
the
was
thing
not
is,
even out.
typically when it comes to these fires, it's been racially motivated, if you haven't noticed, or it's been, what's the word I'm looking for? Religion driven, I guess.
Right.
It's been one or the other. So it's very hard to believe that all of a sudden this was an accident. You're talking a week before Easter. I have a hard time believing that.
It just seems.
I mean,
way
it's
too-
just too coincidental in my opinion, and I really hope that they find what really happened with the church. And I mean, it's sad. It's a historical landmark. My mom's been to the cathedral, so it's just you really hope that they find out what actually did happen.
Don't get me wrong.
So-
I'm not saying I know what it is. I'm just saying let's look at the facts as they are,
Right.
And let's point out that the media is not exactly the most
reliable source of
most
information.
reliable. Yeah, they've been,
Right.
I mean, you've got Tommy Robinson over there getting in trouble because he's having the audacity to report on the Muslim rape gangs that the media won't cover.
Right.
Like, he's getting
Yeah.
in trouble for he got arrested for standing outside
The courthouse.
after they got their conviction, and the Muslim rape gangs, the guys that were being convicted were being walked out of court. He got hauled off for standing out there and causing public disturbance and shit. Like, they are not reporting on it in the news. This has been going on for years, like a couple decades now.
Wow.
Where the police are not wanting to get in there and do anything. They're not. They've got entire what's called no-go zones that are just completely under Sharia law, where police will not even go in there. Like, if you go in there, police are like, all the best. We ain't going in there after you. We ain't gonna go.
You on your own.
Enforce the laws in there. It ain't
Right.
worth it. They'd rather go and arrest people and show up on your door for some bad tweet you put out. Like, that's what they are doing, and they're reporting on. It's like, what? Come on, people.
Right.
Like, there's real crime out there. What the
Everything that seems to be going on here lately is so skewed. You
Yeah,
know.
but check this out. On the Daily Beast, is this article by Will Summers says the Notre Dame Cathedral fire conspiracy theories flourish after investigators say there's no proof of terrorism. And it's just it's so ironic, man. I'm telling you, right-wing personalities are pushing conspiracy theories about Monday's fire at Notre Dame Cathedral. Really, so it's just right-wingers that are pushing this. So automatically, you can tell how they're already trying to set this article up. Within minutes of the fire breaking out yesterday, pro-Trump commentators rushed to portray it as a symbol of Western decline. The West has fallen, declared Mike Cernovich. Others were eager to suggest, without evidence, that Muslims were behind the fire. Again, I've not heard anybody say this was definitely that. They have been suggestions, and that's what you do in these cases. You make your assumptions, and then try to figure out if that's.
But those assumptions aren't facts.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that's what actually happened, or anybody even thinks that that's actually what happened. It's just a possibility. It's like, who stole the cookie from the cookie jar? I don't know. There's 6 fucking people living here. Probably one of them. It wasn't me, because I'm the one I'm the one looking for the damn cookies. You know what I'm saying? It's like you got to look at all your possibilities. Hell, you even got to think about people outside the house might have come in and taken. You have to lay them all out on the table, and then through a process of elimination, that's just called critical thinking. You know?
And investigation as far as what happened.
Get it down to one. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so on Tuesday, French fire investigators said there was no evidence that the fire was caused by arsonists or terrorists. Rather than tamping down the conspiracy theories, though, the French statement has only fueled the idea on the right the terrorists were behind the fire. Instead, they're treating the announcement as proof that the investigators can't be trusted. No. I don't think that's the case. I think it's how about the past history that investigators can't be trusted that shows us that investigators can't be trusted. Oh, my God. This is so funny. Oh, here we go. Pizzagate promoter Jack Probiziak, now a reporter at the pro-Trump One America cable news channel, also suggested without evidence that the fire investigation was a cover-up. Fastest arson investigation in history, Probiziak tweeted. Yeah, it was. It really was. Like I said, the fire wasn't even out yet, and they're already reporting on this. There's no possible way that's actually how this works. It's just ridiculous.
Man.
Anyway, let's check the comments for a minute, see if we got anybody. All right, so Ryan Milford asked, has Easter been destroyed yet? So I guess that's a great segue to move into our main segment of the show. This is where you're up, man. I was actually curious because you asked me like 2 or 3 weeks ago,
right,
about doing this. Make sure your chin's on the mic so I can hear you.
Oh yeah.
Or and I was like, yeah, we can definitely do that. I'll be glad to hear some different perspective that maybe I hadn't heard before, and I'm hoping that's what we'll have today. So.
Oh yeah, without a shadow of a doubt.
You say you needed a whiteboard. I got you set it with a whiteboard. Okay. Plenty of markers to choose from, whatever you want.
Right.
And I guess we'll just rock and roll. Let's see what you got, man.
Okay. All right. Fine.
So, again, if you need to take the mic out to hold it to your mouth while you're writing or whatever it is,
and I'm gonna grab my notes too, because
oh yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, because a lot of times when people put out information, it's going to be critiqued, and I don't want to put anything, wrong or make any errors in my, research.
All right. Excuse me. All right, so basically, you came prepared. You got all your notes. Did you bring your Bible?
I
Nobody can hear you.
Oh, yeah, I got
He says yes. Okay. Yeah, you told me to message you about don't forget your Bible. So I had done it while he's getting his notes ready. I had done a piece on this quite a while ago about the kind of origins of the Easter, Christmas, and all the other pagan influences over the modern day Christian holidays, and did a probably a 10 to 12 minute video on that, just covering the different influences that the pagan and the Christian church had with each other as they were trying to gain control over the state, which would incidentally was control over the actual religion of the state. So that's kind of one of the reasons we've got this super important separation of church and state, is because of shit like this. So what you got?
Oh, well, okay. Well, let me ask you this: Do you know how paganism and religion started?
How paganism and religion?
Or what they consider pagan and what they consider religion? Because religious people say if you don't follow what they believe or blah blah blah, you pagan.
Yeah. Let me see if I got this correct. And as much as I remember, is basically you had Christians were kind of one group, and pagans were kind of considered all of the other old religions. They were kind of a block of all the other old religions. All in one. The paganism isn't in itself a religion. It's just a overarching blanket term for everything except Christianity at the time. Is that
predates
the predates Christianity?
Right. And that all comes into play with Emperor Constantine from the Roman Empire. Right. Are you familiar with the Council of Nicaea?
I've heard of it. I've read about it. I just don't remember off the top of my head. It's part of my research.
Okay.
It's just been a while.
Well, they had a number of, because religion and government, it goes hand in hand. It's pretty much one and the same thing. And what happened?
At least for a time, it was absolutely.
No, it still is today.
Oh, okay, all right.
Say the Pledge of Allegiance. Do you know the Pledge of
I
Allegiance?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
back then, in up to current day, present day.
Yeah.
So what you have is you have one group of people, right, trying to control another group of people, a lesser group of people, and take land, resources, et cetera, et cetera. And religion was a way that they was able to accomplish a lot of their goals.
Right.
But the first thing I do, like when I do research, is I have to ask myself a number of questions, okay? And people say who, what, when, where, and all that.
I hate to keep reminding you. I just want to make sure people can hear what you're saying.
Oh, I'm gonna put this in my hand.
Yeah.
There you go.
absolutely.
That'll be a lot easier for you.
Just
Okay.
rest it on your
Or
chin
slide
while
that
you
out of the
talk.
way.
Okay, so you have like who, what, when, where, how, and all that types of things, right? So I like to look at where first.
Right.
Okay, and when you look at where things occurred, then you can determine when they happened and how they happened and who caused them to happen. You follow?
I'll follow you. Sorry, I'm turning my volume down because it keeps beeping.
Okay, so but before you have the Roman Empire, okay, you have the Greeks, and the Greeks pretty much got all their information and all their mythology, their deities from the people in Egypt. Okay, so you have like some of the deities would be like Osiris, Set, Heru, and then the Greeks turn them into. Let me think here. Who's the number one Greek god? I can't even.
Like a Zeus or something like that?
Zeus. You hit the
Aphrodite?
right. No, yeah, et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera. So they're just like carbon copies of older. How can I say civilizations?
Right.
Okay.
Like
So-
the new and improved, updated version.
Well, I wouldn't say like new and improved and updated. I would just like say,
well, in their mind, maybe it was.
well, I would just say pretty much somebody taking somebody else's stuff and putting their spin on it and claiming it as their own.
Yep. Make sure you put it on your chin, man.
You understand?
I gotta make sure I hear you. You want to?
No.
So
I'm
you
fine.
can hear yourself.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Right. So first, I want to talk about like Alexander the Great, or who they call Alexander the Great. Okay, they give him credit for conquering Persia, and he goes in and conquers Egypt and all this type of stuff. But when they say Alexander, they always credit him as being Greek, right? But in actuality, Alexander the Great, he wasn't Greek.
Really?
He was a Macedonian.
Huh.
Yeah, and if you look at a map, an ancient map, Macedonia is up north here. Greece is down here.
Yeah.
Alexander's father's name was Philip, King Philip. And what they were basically a bunch of barbarians, okay? And what they used to do is they used to just cause war and come down and conquer other groups.
Right.
And that's what happened to Greeks. And according to history, the Macedonians, they didn't have like reading, writing, mathematics, or anything like that. They were kind of like a barbarian type of tribe of people.
Okay.
Okay. So before they come in and conquer Greece, they don't have reading, writing, arithmetic, anything. But the Greeks have it. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
They're reading, they're writing. They have
I knew
math.
you're gonna get animated. So.
They have mythology, they have gods and all of that type of stuff.
Not to throw your flow, I had a lapel mic for you because I figured you'd be moving around.
Oh, yeah.
But I couldn't get them to work.
Okay.
So we just have to make do with the mic.
Okay.
Like I said, if you just rest it on your chin, you ain't got no problems.
Well,
Is that really weird? It's a clean.
yeah,
it's clean, man.
I'm just
It takes some time getting used to it.
Right,
you know?
right. So
He looked like he's scared to put his chin on it.
I was the same way when I first started doing it. I was
feels-
like, way over here.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah.
weird, but it does help a lot. I've got my beard resting on my.
okay, so
Sorry, go ahead.
okay, so are we following as far as like Macedonians and Greeks?
So far, so
Yeah.
Okay, so we have two different cultures. Okay, you got
You need to draw it up there or anything?
I
or
don't-
You just kind of you.
yeah, I don't need to draw. I'm not writing anything right now.
Okay.
So we have Macedonians, then we have Greek cultures.
Yeah.
Two different kind of cultures.
Right.
Okay. You got one that's a warrior culture, and then the other is kind of like I don't know. You call them like maybe like a more
advanced
civilization,
civilized.
Yeah, more civilized type of group
Right.
of people. And so the Macedonians, they come down and conquer Greek, and that's when they become get written into Greek culture because they like colonize it. You understand what I'm saying?
I think so, yeah.
So that's where they learn their reading, their writing, keeping records, and history and all that type of stuff from. They get it from the Greeks.
Okay.
You follow?
I'm with you.
Okay.
Just not sure where we're going yet.
All right. So well all right. Well let's get into.
I mean, I'm sure the background information is important. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
That
Now
I know
look.
where we're going. I like your hat, by the way. I just noticed you got your little hat all done.
Oh
up
yeah,
and shit.
yeah. Thanks.
It's pretty nice.
I think.
Been too hotep. Got your little eyebrow on there.
Okay.
You make that?
No. Guy in New York.
Oh,
made
cool.
it, sent
Right
it
on.
to me.
Right on.
Yeah.
So what you got?
Okay. So I okay now what I'm gonna show today is how like Easter the co-origin, it has nothing to do with a man dying on the cross. It's all astrological and cosmology science.
So I had somebody comment. He asked, before you get too far, just for perspective, what religion or belief do you claim?
I don't claim a
right.
religion
All right.
or a kind of belief. I claim science.
All right. So there you go. Science it is. All right. Continue.
Okay.
Just want to answer the audience questions.
Oh no
too.
it's fine. Okay, so where was I?
You were talking about how Easter was cosmological
Okay, and astrological.
and astrological.
Okay,
right?
so all right, I'm going.
Sorry. What's the difference between cosmological and astrological? I've always just kind of put them in the same bucket in my mind.
Well, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. It's,
Okay.
it's just different terminology for the same thing.
Gotcha.
We're talking about astrology, pretty much.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure. I didn't know if it was something like if there was a distinguishing difference that maybe I just wasn't aware of, or
Oh no, we dealing with stars and planets.
stars and planets.
Things like
All right.
that. Okay, so let's see here. Solar cross. Okay, so solar cross, right? And I'm gonna write this down that way everybody can.
Yep.
You got black? Let's
I do.
use black.
Yeah. As long as you keep your mic by your mouth, we'll be able to hear you.
Okay, so you say solar cross. Then you can say at the end if all this is just coincidental or not. So okay, you have a solar cross, right? So
I'll tell you what. Give me just a second. I'm gonna try to figure out a way you can hold the mic to your mouth while you look at your notes and stuff.
no, I'm gonna write, then I'll talk. I'll be all right.
Oh, I got you. Okay, so while he's writing up there, I think the way I understand it is something to do with Easter. I do know of the pagan origins of it. I haven't really looked into like exactly what the beliefs were and all that. I know it had something to do with fertility, had to do with that certain time of year. I kind of got the general gist of it. I know it has nothing to do with Jesus Christ dying on the cross. That's kind of been co-opted, and what you end up having was later on in the religions, especially as the church kept coming under different people's control. Like if you were a Christian and you were in control of the government, like all of a sudden everybody was doing Christian things or having to be Christian or having to kind of adjust their beliefs a little bit to look more Christian. And then the next 100 years you'd have somebody else in power who's one of the old pagan religions, and now all of a sudden Christians are persecuted and even being called atheist at times.
Right.
Like I thought that when I heard that, I thought that was wild, that Christians at one point in history were known as atheists as well. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But it's just it's more like I used to think that Christianity was like trying to go around the world and say, here, this is our beliefs, here you go, it's just like your beliefs, check it out. And people were like, oh yeah, so okay, I got you. And then they went along, and I was like, wait a minute, this is way bloodier than that. This was a battle back and forth of people constantly trying to hold on to their most deeply held traditions and beliefs as the different things keep going back and forth between the two. And it's like bloody. It's lots of battles, death. We're talking about locking up Christians en masse and burning them, and then turning around and having the Christians do it back to the pagans who did it to them in the first place, and retaliation and trying to kind of, it was a mess. It was like a maelstrom of just soupy goo of blood and anger all mixed up before you end up coming up with what you see now is modern day Easter.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, hold on now. There's a whole past history of this.
Okay. So
All right, so let's see what you got here.
okay. So we're gonna talk about the solar cross first. Okay.
All right.
Now the solar cross, you have 2 solstices, right? And you have 2 equinox. Okay. Solstice, you have summer solstice, and then you have a winter solstice. Okay. And then you have an equinox, you have a spring equinox, and you have a fall equinox, right? Now, Good Friday is the first day of spring.
Right.
Okay. Now, so
Well,
if you look-
it's supposed to be the first day of spring, right?
Good Friday.
Yeah,
it's
I know-
always
I know.
it's the first day of spring.
See, because we've already decided spring's already happened, haven't we? Like
Well-
we're not still in winter right now.
Well, not actually till Friday. Friday would be the official first day of spring. Would be Friday.
Oh, is that how they do it?
That's
still?
how that's how they
Yeah,
do it.
I don't know. I thought people
according to
said
the
it-
solar calendar.
Right. Well, according
It's
that-
like right
yeah.
now we use the Gregorian calendar.
Right.
So are you familiar with the Gregorian calendar, the Julian calendar?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so we're going back, and this predates. I'm going back pre-Gregorian, pre-Julian calendar.
Yep.
Okay, so Good Friday is the first day of spring. All right. Now, if you look at Easter, Easter always falls on Good Friday. Always falls Easter, or however you want to call it, right? But if you look at let's say birth dates, time of death, like let's take an obituary for an example, right? If somebody is born on a day, right, that day is blah blah blah, it's going to be on the obituary.
Right.
When they die on that day, like whatever day a person dies on, it's going to be on the obituary that day. You understand? Jesus' date of death is different every year.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't think most Christians think that Easter was the day Jesus died necessarily. I'm not
Well,
like they don't think he actually died. But, knowing that the day does shift and change, I wouldn't. I mean, you don't think that necessarily, do you? That
What's that?
Easter every year is the day that Jesus died.
No.
Yeah, I don't think that's a common.
It's almost like a remembrance of him, but as far as the actual birth or death date, no.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion. But
okay, well, let me ask
Yeah.
you-
I've never met a Christian that actually thought Jesus died on Easter, and then it was more of a celebration,
symbolic celebration
of,
of
symbolic celebration of the day that he died.
Okay, well, let me ask a question then.
All right.
Why does the date change every year?
Well, it just has to do with probably. You're talking about as far as when does Good Friday come and East and
Right.
spring? I don't remember. I don't remember.
Well-
I know there was a reason for it, but
Okay, because
because the calendar years always change.
well, the calendar years change, but the actual weekend changes like a lot. It
Yeah.
might be at the end of March or it might be mid April.
might be into April.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It does shift a lot,
Okay.
not just a couple days.
Well, if you look up the days that Easter fall on, right,
Mhm.
you're always gonna find that Good Friday is gonna be on the first day of spring.
I didn't hear anything you just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. If-
We need like a shot collar on you every time. oh, microphone. Sorry.
Okay, so what I'm saying here is, if you look up the research, if you research, okay, hold on, go to the comment there because it looks like somebody's got a question.
Yeah. It's a buddy of mine I work with. He says for him the Easter is the celebration of the day Jesus rose from the dead, and Good Friday is when he died. Now I don't know if he actually thinks Jesus died on Good Friday or if it's just a celebration of the day Jesus died. I'm gonna guess based on this comment he thinks it's the celebration of.
Jesus rose from the dead. Good Friday is when he died.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's what he's saying. He's saying Good Friday is when he died. So then my question would be, how does he die on a different day every year?
Well, I think that's what we were trying to explain is the fact that it's a celebration of, I wouldn't say celebration, but just of when he died. I guess basically it's not that specific day, although it should be, but I think it's the weekend as far as the way they celebrate it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
So rather than that same day being every year, which it ought to be, it's one of those situations where that's the time they
just
celebrate.
so we can get a clearer understanding of this, it says here Easter falls on the first Sunday after the full moon date based on mathematical calculations that fall on or after March 20. So astrological, like you said.
Right.
All right. If the full moon is on a Sunday, Easter is celebrated on the following Sunday. Although Easter is liturgically related to the beginning of spring in the northern hemisphere, which is the March equinox, and the full moon, its date is not based on the actual astronomical date of either event. So I really never did quite look into when they fall. So the dates of many Christian feasts are based on the date of Easter Sunday. So Ash Wednesday is 46 days before Easter. Palm Sunday is 1 week before Easter. Maundy Thursday is 3 days before Easter. Good Friday 2 days before Easter. Boy, that's...
Well, here, let me explain it this way.
Yeah.
So if my birthday falls on a Tuesday, which it did this past year,
Yeah.
okay, I don't do anything for my birthday. But then yet, come the weekend, we go out and celebrate.
Yeah.
Although it's not necessarily the day that I was born, it's just the weekend in which we decided to celebrate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think that's kind of the same correlation as it goes with Good Friday and, of course, with Easter. Although it doesn't fall on the exact same day every year, it just so happens to be the weekend in which it's celebrated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I just the reason I'm hanging on this point is I don't want to necessarily insult the intelligence of Christians, because a lot of them are pretty smart dudes. I'm not saying you were insulting them, but I'm saying that I've literally never met anybody that thinks Jesus, died on this day and rose on this day, and completely oblivious to the fact that date shifts every year.
Well, it's kind of like with his, apparent birth date, his Christmas Day, that always, remains the same.
Yeah.
I think as far as his death is concerned, I think it kind of falls with the parameters of like when we celebrate a birthday. Like I gave the example, if my birthday's on a Tuesday, I'll celebrate it that weekend only because it makes more sense. Do you follow?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of where I was going at with that perspective.
Right.
As far as why don't we celebrate the actual day itself? I mean, that would be a question to ask, I guess, a preacher.
All right.
So
all right, so we can keep moving on. I think we've beat that dead horse.
Yeah.
Twice.
Third time if need be.
Yeah, we'll beat it again. You want to come in here and beat the dead horse?
Okay. So when we talk about the equinox, right? The spring equinox. Okay, equinoxes.
I got an idea. I'll just give you all a little tug whenever you need to remember.
It's just something you're not used to doing,
Right.
so you forget to do it.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah, I was like that too at first. That's why it helped to wear the headphones, man. 'Cause it's like,
Yeah.
oh. Came prepared with the research.
Okay.
We gotta get you a computer.
And that's what I like is the fact that he does that. He does this
Yeah.
research.
We
He takes
need to
the
get you a
time.
computer so you can type your notes up. Maybe a printer. What do you think?
And he's old school, man.
Yeah,
I like that.
I take all my notes by hand,
Yeah.
and then they end up on the computer, written nice, organized format.
Right.
Okay. Okay. We talk about Jesus' birthday.
Yeah.
I think you might have flicked your microphone off.
No, I couldn't.
Yeah. It's.
Yeah, move that switch.
There you go.
All right.
Okay. We talk about Jesus' birthday just a moment ago about being on the 25th
Yeah.
every year,
Mhm.
right? And I'm going to show how that's astrological too. Okay. The winter solstice is the shortest day of the year, right? And what that is, it's like for 3 days.
Yeah.
I think it's beginning on December 21st. The
It's
sun
usually around 21st,
stays
22nd,
stagnant.
something like that.
stagnant in
Yeah.
the sky for 3 days, right? So let's see here. When I'm 3 days, the sun remains stagnant in the cosmos. Okay, so on the third day, the sun it actually starts to make a shift.
Yeah.
So, which is going back to longer days. So that's why you have like the birth of Christ being on the 25th of December every year, because it's all astrological. There is like how can I say this? No dates in the Bible. That's another thing.
No dates.
Yeah, so it's kind of like how can I say? When you have Constantine, the emperor, and he's what he was trying to do was Christianize his territories with they had
Right.
conquered and everything. So what he did was he took from the ancient people and made it holidays and Christianizing what they were doing, and he just Christianized them. That's why they celebrate.
Did you say a lot of people think that Constantine was a Christian as well, and I don't think if I'm remembering this correctly, I don't think he was. I think his mother was actually a pagan by those day standards, and he was actually raised as a pagan, and he ended up taking on Christian beliefs as more of a political move, and it actually helped him rise in ranks in power, and he ended up using that power to then start introducing some of his old beliefs into the Christian religion.
Right, yeah. That's pretty much right. And what it done was it kind of kept the confusion down. Tugging on that. So,
I'm just listening.
Yeah. So you pretty much hit the nail on the head with that. But let's see. What else was I gonna say?
So the goal was you were saying that the goal was to try to destroy this idea behind Easter.
No. I mean, it's not destroy it.
Not destroy it, but what's the word I'm looking for here? Discredit it, maybe.
Well, no, not
coming
discredit.
From more of a scientific standpoint.
Not discredit, but a lot of
correlations.
People, they have traditions what they follow, and they don't understand why they do them things.
Right,
you know what I mean? So, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's like a herd of sheep following somebody, just not knowing where you're going because you don't know how the facts, or you've never been educated to know where you're going.
Yeah.
You're just trusting in what somebody has told you to take you to that point.
Yeah, it is amazing how many people I talk to who are Christians that believe that Christmas was, the whole backstory behind Christmas as far as, Jesus being born and that whole thing, and then Easter is when he was killed and rose 3 days later. And they think that that's the whole story, but nobody actually looks back at the history of why do we hunt for Easter eggs? Like, why is there an Easter bunny? What is up with that? Where does that even come from? Do you know where those come from?
Yeah, Easter eggs and the Easter bunny, that comes from old, I want to say Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar, and Ishtar, she was a goddess of fertility. And her symbols were like the bunny, because the bunny is looked at as a fertility animal.
Right.
So that's where you get the bunny and the eggs.
Yeah, breeding like rabbits. It's all fertility symbols.
And things like that.
That was the time of year when everybody was getting their freak on and
stuff like that. Right.
It was the best time. It was
Yeah,
and it was almost like a blessing to try to get fertile. We wanted to make sure we had babies before the winter came in, and wanted to make the So I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Hold on a minute. We got. Hey, Ryan is all up in the comments today. All right, so yeah, he said it's a celebratory day. Obviously, it's not the actual date since it's different every year. It's the same way as Thanksgiving. His argument is to destroy already. Is it? I'm not sure. I think we need some editing on that one. I'm not sure what he was trying to say there. I think it was when we were trying to talk about what the goal of today was, to try to not destroy or discredit, but just basically just
bring science into this
educate on what the past history was,
right?
Things
Basically,
like that,
yeah. So what was the Bible for? You said you needed or is that a separate thing we'll get to later?
Well, here's the thing. What people have to understand too is when we're dealing with religion and just ancient culture in general, right? Before there was Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and things like that.
Right.
People studied nature. You see what I mean?
Right.
And what done was
they actually studied what they could see and their observations of their surround. Yeah.
And how the natural environment worked. And when they done that, that's where mythology comes from.
Yeah.
Because what they did was anthropomorphize different aspects of nature, different planets, different stars, and things like that. Because it's easier, when you can teach somebody young, if you give a star a human characteristic, so it's like making it an actual person.
Make a story, making an analogy, not an analogy, but an allegory out of
right, pretty much, and that's pretty much the basis on on where
So let me ask you, because this is something I was just thinking about recently, and I'm still trying to play with the ideas. Like, I got this sense as I'm listening to, say, Jordan B. Peterson. He's got these biblical lectures where he looks at it from a real rational standpoint. He doesn't ever say whether or not he believes in God or not, but he just looks at the rational arguments behind the stories in the Bible. Like, what are these stories trying to tell us?
Right.
What are the meta truths, so to speak, that the stories are trying to tell us? And I was sitting there thinking, man, because if God is just the highest ideal of something, like maybe your God is truth, love, virtue, or whatever, and in your mind, God is the highest example of that, and then Jesus is like the meta hero in all these stories. It's like, you know, the things that make up a hero in all these other stories all combined into one, and now you got this mega meta hero that's like the end all be all of all heroes, and then everything's embodied in this one guy. He's the perfect example of all these other things. Doesn't mean it actually exists. It's more of an anthropomorphization of that.
Right.
But what I was going to ask you is I was sitting there thinking, man, the way they anthropomorphize the different gods in Greek culture, for example, and Roman culture, where you got the god of thunder, the god of love, the god of war, the god of every little fucking thing out there. It's like, I almost wonder if it wasn't necessarily, if maybe they didn't believe there was actual like people, beings out there, but maybe at some point it was just that. Maybe it was just a story that was told to help deliver an idea to the children or to other people who,
Right.
you know.
It's to give people hope, gives people something to cling on to. And this is something that when I was growing up, you know, I wasn't really involved with the church or even, you know, the Bible or God himself. I always thought that the Bible was one of those storytelling books that had been passed down from generation to generation. And as it's been passed down, the stories had been misconstrued or they've been over-exaggerated. And I often wondered that if God wasn't the symbol for somebody to fall back onto during a crisis or, you know, things that go on personally in your life, to give you some sort of hope, because that's the one thing as human nature, we all want something to cling on to make us feel better. Okay.
Something to strive toward.
Well, to strive towards to be a better person. Yeah. And I think that was the idea. And for, as a Christian human being, for me to say that is, you know,
a little blasphemous.
Yeah, it is. But that
I've always wondered that though. If it was there was a time where those gods weren't actual gods, they were just the highest ideal of this.
They were praised as gods
of this message
because of who they were.
Yeah, like this message that we're trying to get across to people, embodied in this story, embodied in this character that we've created to represent this idea. Like the idea of war is actually like, you know, they start telling it as a story where it's like this person is doing these things and causing, you know, and after a while people start actually kind of believing that it's a
well that's how they start out. They start out as
a deity
allegorical stories,
right?
And at some point in time, people just start taking those stories literally. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I don't think that they were never meant to be literal.
I don't see any reason why they would be, honestly. I mean, just based on just the fantastical nature of the stories. I mean, like anybody in their right mind would look at, say, the Bible, I would think, and say, well, those stories don't really make logical sense.
Right, correct.
You know, in the absence of, say, some, you know, supreme miracle or some supreme interference by a supreme being, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the only way that would have even possible. Like, never in the history of the entire world has somebody died for 3 days and came back to life. Like, that's just never happened.
Right.
Well, like I said, I mean, you know, again, this is something I've often felt and believed, that when, you know, it's like being a storyteller. You know, if I wrote a book 500 years ago, I guarantee you 500 years later, somebody's going to come along and add over time their thoughts, their opinions on the accounts in which they thought had happened. Yeah. So by the time you get to that 500 years, everything that was once originally written is no longer the same as what it is now, because you've had so many fingers in that cookie jar writing what they want, you know?
Let me interject on that, because like a lot of people, they take the Bible for face value and for what it is, and it's supposed to be the word of God.
Right.
So then my question would become, you know, how do you change over time the word of God? How do you get better than God and change his word over time?
Well, I think it's the story wrapped around God himself. leading up to events. I mean, if you look at the Old Testament, New Testament, or even other books of the Bible, things are worded differently. There, it may not be directly what was said or what was done, but it is, in a sense, written differently. So,
Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I mean, I was just trying to explain the fact that this could be taken in this sense as, if you're going to approach this from science, I'm going to approach this from, being a storyteller. I want to write a book that would inspire people to do good things. I want to write a book that would inspire people to behave differently in a reasonable manner and have something to strive to be better at. Yeah. If I wrote a book like that, and people read it, hopefully that would give them the ability to want to do something good in life and not be such a horrible creature, because we all have the distinction of being evil people, but we also have the capabilities of being something good. So if we have that book to fall back on, it's going to exude more of the good than it is the bad. Does that make sense?
Well, I'll say this. I say it sounds good, but if you look at the condition of the way the world is today,
right,
I think it was a failure.
Yeah, well, I would have to agree with you on that.
As we just seen, religious attacks, Christians versus Muslims versus Jews versus this versus that.
Right.
And a lot of people have died, humanity, under the banner of these different religions and these ideologies.
But at the same time, on the flip side of this, there are still good people in the world. There are still good people doing good things.
Right,
and,
right.
Unfortunately, catastrophic events like the Cathedral, is very unfortunate, and I hate the fact that it happened.
Well, it's been more catastrophic events.
Right. So, but that is all a mindset of where you want to see things for what they are. How much good is actually going on in the world? How much good do we actually possess to alter mankind's way of thinking? Or is it because evil is such an emotional killer that it takes away from the good that we want to see positive in the world? Because I like to think that it is. Evil has such this grapple on our hearts that it has a hard time allowing good things to come in. It does, because for whatever reason, it's like when you get into an argument with your spouse, you remember all the bad things you've done to one another, but you can't point out the good things that you've done. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's a lot of the problems that we see today, is that we remember those things.
That's an interesting comment he just made, because I just said that to somebody not too long ago. Whenever you get into an argument with somebody, the bad comes out.
Yeah.
And nobody say, hey, well, let's look at this here, the good times.
There actually is a biological reason for that. You all know what that is?
Go ahead.
Educate us.
Well, I mean, think about this. When you're out in the jungles and you're trying to get away from these jungle cats out in the woods, or alligators, or whatever the hell's out there that want to eat you,
right?
Like, you do pretty well to make sure that you are very well tuned to notice the negative influences in your world. Like, you better make sure what something bad that's going to happen to you, or you're going to, you want to make sure that there's like a developmental thing it's a survival mechanism,
right?
Whereas when everything's all calm and good, and there's nothing like there's no survival need in that, in remembering when things are just fine. And things are just going okay.
But you would think that would be a survival tool, because what makes things good.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, you want to make sure you got to be able to react fast when shit happens. When shit go down,
right?
You want to be able to, recall, oh shit, that's a cat. I know what that is. I know what that bad thing in my world is. Like,
right.
You need to be recall that. Like, it's a memory thing that's been developed over a millennia. It's just another possible way of looking at it. But I want to say, get my thoughts back together. Brain fart, and it's gone. Yeah, I was trying to hold on to it and let you finish your point. I have a hard time with that. At any rate,
but no, I like I said, I was just simply, I'm approaching this as a Christian. I tend to lean more towards the middle of this whole idea of a God. I do believe that there is one. Now, when you approach it from a scientific standpoint, I'm going to listen. I want to hear a different perspective. Yeah. And I think that's the only way I can truly educate myself into drawing my own conclusions without being told what is real and what's not. Right. It's a part of, free thinking. And I think that's what a lot of Christians, and it doesn't matter what religion it is, I don't think, you get your hardcore Christians that are so dead set and it's X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, what if it's not? But the first time you make your, case or you try to present something different, they scorn you for it. And to me, that's not a good way to open a dialogue when it comes to religion. It's let's talk about it, and
Right.
and unfortunately, that's just the kind of the way the world is. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's Catholic, if it's Baptist or who Muslim, whatever. You have those hardcore groups that will tell you, no, it's this, it's this,
The
then-
fundamentalists.
Right.
Zealots.
Yeah.
right, and I'm not against it, and I understand where they're coming from, but I just want people to open their eyes and open their thought process, and knowing that there can be different ways people approach this, and why there are different beliefs, and why we think the way we do, and very individually. So
Right. Well, let me add, just
Yeah.
in my opinion,
Mhm.
just from being a researcher and studying in history and science and everything, right? The Bible, I'll say the Bible, the Quran, any of those religious texts, they're really not that old.
right,
They're not as ancient as people think they are.
right,
It's like the Bible, nobody in the Bible walked around with a Bible.
No.
You see what I'm saying? The Bible
Right.
really didn't come into print till
About 500 years afterwards. something.
Gutenberg. Well, no, actually, way later than that, because the Bible didn't come into existence actually until the printing press,
Yeah.
and that's Gutenberg.
Can you imagine? Like that's twice as old as the U.S. More than twice as old as
Was-
the U.S. has even been a country. Can you imagine taking a story from twice as long ago as the U.S. has even been a country and trying to print it up on a book
Right.
and get it correct?
Yeah.
Well, I remember what I was going to say earlier was about stories. About we're just drawn to stories. Everybody loves a good
Right.
story.
oh yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
Versus like and like you're talking about this, all this stuff. Like when we're talking about the old pagan religions and Christianity, that was all oral spoken tradition. Like none of this was like written down. Like some of it was, but it was held in the hands of a select few.
Right.
Like the average person was just all oral tradition that was receiving these things through a story format. And I'm sitting here thinking that, like, what better way to get a point across or a message across or some kind of a teaching that you're trying to, some kind of a principle that you're trying to deliver than through a story format, versus trying to memorize a technical document and then tell somebody, hey man, listen here, you should be good because this technical point and this technical point and this technical point, with no narrative structure whatsoever, just point by point list. Who's going to remember that? Who's going to even be engaged in that and want to listen to that and take into their heart and soul the messages that's actually like the core message within that. So it just makes a lot more sense that stories would have been told in this format where you
because
have
they grab your attention.
yeah, it makes
They-
a lot.
Right.
they-
It's
they
all,
hold your
it's like
attention.
it's like the hero's journey that you see through so many movies, like Lord of the Rings. Is this hero's journey that goes all the way through it, and you kind of pick up a lot of like good moral lessons and stuff through that. And if that was your religion, like it would be very easy to say, okay, well, this is what this person's example of what means to be good. This is what he did here. This is, and when he went to that place, he did that, and then you'd remember that and tell your kids, and that would be a much easier, a much easier and digestible chunk of information to deliver to the next generation where you don't have a written text to do that.
But I think as people, as we've have aged and that we've grown over time in civilization, we're currently seeing a trend where we want to see facts presented to us when it comes to the media, right? So we're now in this place where we're starting to doubt a lot of religions because it's very difficult to state those facts. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing a lot of scrutiny on the churches and even different religions, is because now all of a sudden we as people have become so fact-based. If you can't provide the facts, then your story doesn't really hold to accountable. So, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing such a decline as far as, people say back in the 40s and 50s that actually believed in the Bible and, and studied it and wanted to live by the word of God, because they actually did that. They treated each other better. I mean, to be honest with you, today, I don't think we treat people good. I really don't. I think we treat people worse than we've ever have, at least from my experience in the 38 years I've been in existence on this earth. Do I believe that good still exists? Absolutely. But I think it's harder to pull that out of people now than say it was, 50, 60 years ago. And there's just there's so much tied into that, but like I said, I think part of the reason is to why religion is getting the beat down that it is because we're so fact-based individuals now because of everything that we're seeing that's going on. Yeah. We want legitimate facts.
It's like the atheists came along and destroyed religion and then left nothing. I like this example I heard a while ago. It's like the atheists came and destroyed the church and burned it down on a rainy day. And all the Christians had nowhere to go. They're outside in the rain going, okay, now what? like I think it's on the atheists also as a collectively to give another example of some ways to be good in the universe. So, so it doesn't make sense.
No, it does. I mean, I follow where you're going.
It's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. It's like people have grabbed onto these religions, been raised in these religions. They have a good moral framework to work with. It just works. I mean, people can just generally live by it, and it seems to work pretty well. It's not 100% scientifically factual, but when you take all that away and you try to dismantle all that without giving somebody something else to live for, you end up seeing this trend toward nihilism and people just going, oh, there's no meaning in life. Might as well kill myself. Talk about, there's too many people on the earth and we should all just stop having babies. And then, the world will be better without people on it. You get that kind of attitude.
Well, it's kind of like when you hear people talk about being Christians and the ones that aren't, that they're just lost souls. Well, yeah, they're lost because they don't have a book to cling on to when they go through difficult times, whether it's finances, relationship, or things of that nature.
He's saying a book to cling on to, but when you come into existence, right, you don't come into existence with a book to cling on to.
Right.
You get that book from somebody gives.
Right.
So you get that book from
somebody telling you what you should believe in, and here's hope for
exactly.
as you get older.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, when we come into existence, right? Just say like a apple tree, for example, right? When an apple tree comes into existence, nobody has to tell that apple tree that it's an apple tree.
Right.
It comes pre-coded.
Right.
It knows what it is and what it's supposed to do once it get here. You don't have to give it a book.
Right.
So why do we need books?
Well, it's to teach us to be better people. I would think that's what the Bible is scripted for, is to teach us how to behave in a very, I wouldn't say normal manner, but in a way that's very and a good, but there's nothing wrong with the Bible here. I think it's a positive way to show us that if we live the life that it's asking us to lead, we can be better towards fellow man. We can be better for us, for our children, for our spouses, things of that nature. And I think that's one of the reasons why that book is so important to people. Go ahead.
Well, would you say would you think it's more important to learn that from your family than from a book?
I think it is.
I think the family structure is the base for everything.
Most people learn.
Right.
Most people don't even crack open the book.
Right.
That's
what I'm saying.
Read the Bible.
Okay, so if you want to take that a step further, and I'm gonna tread down this road, but your behaviors as a child and the way that you're raised, whether it's to be honest, to tell the truth, whether you see racism or not, all that stems from your upbringing of your family, the teachings of what your parents have taught you, what is okay and what's not okay. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
the modeling of behavior and things like that.
Right. The book isn't introduced until obviously you get older in life. We all know this. Yeah. So I think it's very important for the parents to take some accountability and responsibility in the actions of way, children speak to one another or even to adults, And so I think originally at first, if you got a Christian parent and you're setting those models and examples to those children, you would hope that they would raise children to be good, to be honest, to be, forthcoming if they've done something wrong and things of that nature. Now, if you have a set of parents that weren't raised on those values, I'll go off, do whatever you want to do. And they're, doing drugs in front of their children and they think that it's okay and be promiscuous. And next thing you know it, you got a teenager that's out sleeping and running around and doing those things. It's the examples of the parents that are being set forth. That book, if it's designed the way that I think that it is, it's to give those parents the avenue and the teachings to be able to pass along to their children to be better people growing up. I really hope that makes sense. But at the same time, too, I think this is, you have to have your own personal thought process on what the Bible is. As you get older and you understand the differences between good and evil, you have to ask yourself, is this book going to lead me in the direction in which I want it to go? And if it is, open it up, read it for yourself. Now, if not, then explore your other options. I mean, see what other religions are out there. Study science. That's what we're talking about, is think for yourself. So, I mean, as far as going back to what we originally were talking about, as far as the book and clinging on to and things of that nature, I think it's generational. I think that it depends on the parents and how you want to pass along the knowledge of what you've been shown. Whether the Bible is truth or not, I don't think nobody really knows. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, with that being said, you're really kind of depending on the parent to pass along those ideal faiths.
See, so now my next question would be, before the Bible, what was the tool to teach children how to be, honest and, blah, blah, blah.
That just comes from the parents, just from knowing from life lessons.
See, so you really don't need a Bible for that.
No, I don't think so. That's what I was trying to explain, is you don't need a Bible to know the difference between good and evil. That is something that I think in our instincts, we automatically know. Okay, well, if little Johnny goes off and he goes and plays, 40 feet up in a tree, that's not going to end well, because there's always that possibility that he could fall. But if we step back as parents and say, no, Johnny, if you go up that tree, X, Y, and Z could happen. I don't want you to get hurt, or the possibilities of you getting hurt. So we as parents are responsible up to a certain point.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a good example of good and evil necessarily.
Right.
Well, no, not good and evil. I'm just
might be more like if we're
talking about the teachings of parents towards their children.
So where you go? I'm kind of confused, honestly, what your argument is, where you're heading with that.
No, it's not an argument. I'm just saying, like, when he's speaking of good and evil, right?
Yeah.
Just from my perspective.
Oh, when I say argument, I'm not talking about you're fighting with.
Okay.
Right. Just basically making a logical argument.
Okay.
Right.
Well,
Debating.
Good and evil, just from my point of view, it's a matter of perspective. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there is no good.
Yeah, actually, no. So what do you mean by that?
Well, what I'm saying is, like, good and evil is pretty much it's opinionated on what you perceive it to be, because a lot of people do quote unquote good things, or they think they're doing good things, but in somebody else's mindset, it might be the most dastardly thing they're doing in existence. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. So really, just from my perspective, there's no good and evil. It's just how you look at things.
Almost kind of right and
what I mean?
wrong, so to speak. What would be considered right versus wrong?
Right.
Okay.
Because when you look at life in general, right, it's all about like survival.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you watch nature, you'll see animals, right? Some animals, predators, prey animals. Predator animals, they make a kill, and different group of animals could come in and they take that kill from whoever made the kill. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So is it wrong for, just say lions, hyenas, for example?
See, I don't think you can look at animals as on the realm of good and evil necessarily, because I think
they're not. Man, that's a difficult one, because I don't think they have the capacity to teach.
They're kind of doing what they're kind of pre-programmed to do.
Right.
They just do what they do. They're kind of almost like evolved to be this way. This is who they are. That's in their nature. It's what they do.
Right. Well,
but we have the ability to compare different outcomes and look to the future and say, okay, well, if I go down this path and do this, then this might happen. If I go down this path, this might happen. We have the ability to compare and contrast different actions that we might take, and then decide whether or not that's considered good or evil in that aspect. I like the universally preferable behavior as a general. Have you ever heard of this? The concept of universally preferable behavior. And what basically it's just like, if we can universalize it and make it something that we can all agree, okay, yeah, I think we all agree that nobody wants to be raped. You can't want to be raped. It's not you know what I'm saying? It's universally agreeable.
That's a bad thing.
Agreed upon that raping's probably a bad thing. We probably shouldn't do that. I mean, you're never going to look at a rape situation and say that person did good. Like, I don't think, regardless of your perspective, you're going to look at me murdering Anthony here as good.
Well, let's look from the mind of a rapist.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't think he's doing anything wrong.
Oh yeah, he knows he's doing wrong.
You think?
Because that person he's raping very much doesn't want him to rape.
No, okay. Well,
and he knows this, or she. Let's be fair.
Well, I mean, at that point, you have to understand the capabilities of what the word no means. if you're being a rapist and you're raping someone and they're telling you no, stop, you as an adult are automatically know what that word no and stop means. It means stop what you're doing. So to not understand that, I have a hard time believing that a rapist wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah, I just can't put myself in a frame of mind to suggest whether he knows he's doing right or not, but that's different. But to actually say that he's doing good, like you can't if you've got a philosophy that says this rapist as he rapes is doing good, like you've done something wrong. You need to go back and try again on your philosophies if you've come up to that conclusion somehow. You know what I'm saying?
Evil people, they do evil things, or what most people will consider to be evil things.
Yeah, but do they think they're doing good?
In their mind, I think
Muslim
do.
people thought they did a good thing when they crashed the planes into the World Trade Center. I mean, they thought that they were doing a justice to their God.
Right.
Which is Allah.
Let's take Adolf Hitler, for example. He committed genocide on people in Nazi Germany. He thought that was good in his mind.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Those are just sick individuals.
Clearly.
But we understand the difference between good and evil. It's what I'm saying is we understand that it's a bad thing to kill people, innocent people that had done nothing to you.
Let me hit up the comments section here. Ryan's been saying a few more things here. He said, I like this one here. He says, I don't know of too many incidents where Christianity has gotten people killed. Some people in history have used Christianity to manipulate people into doing bad things, but I don't think Christianity itself should be blamed for an individual's bad intentions. What do you think about that? Can you think of any examples in history where Christianity has gotten people killed?
The Crusades.
Yeah.
That's the first thing come to mind.
Now, first thing comes to mind when I hear the Crusades was because that seems to be a pretty common misconception about what that was about.
Okay.
And that had a lot to do with self-defense in light of Muslim rule. Like there was a constant invasion of Muslims coming in. This is the same exact thing we're seeing in Western European countries right now.
Right.
Where Muslims are slowly coming in, taking over the country. The ideology's taking over. Sharia law's taking over.
But
they're outbreeding the population.
But that's coming from
and the Crusades,
opposition's perspective.
Well, they're down to like one or two countries, and they finally said, all right, enough is enough. And then now throughout the rest of human history, they've now been held up as like the evil guys, the bad guys, all the time. It's like nobody wants to mention what happened centuries before that. This slow but surely steady, infiltration and takeover from another culture, another religion. You got some reading over there. What are you reading, man?
Yeah, I'm looking at this here.
Yeah,
Maybe
yes.
if an apple tree could read a book, it could produce apples more effectively.
Yeah. Ryan says maybe if an apple tree could read a book, it could produce apples more effectively.
Right.
That's probably true.
Well,
You need like a technical document for tree, like an apple falls from the tree. You hand it a document. It says, "Oh,
yeah.
Well, that definitely changes the plans I did have."
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we wrap up here. All right. Like I said, the Crusades were led by someone using Christianity to manipulate people. Man, at some point,
Well, you could say the same
thing. You could say that about everything.
Yeah, that's every religion.
Like every religion, every kind of person that does bad things, you could say, oh, well, that's not really, like they say, we've never tried communism. Or like communism, we've never really got it to work right. And you look back in history and you're like, well, there's many, many examples of communism killing multiple millions of people through hunger and a number of other violent acts. And then people will say, oh, well, that's not real communism. I think that sounds a lot the same here. Oh, well, that's not real Christianity. Well, yeah, it actually was real Christianity. Right. It actually was Christians banding up together under the name of their God to go in and take out the bad guy. I mean, or in their eyes, the bad guy. I don't think that was being used to manipulate people at all. I think that was actually an example. There's been plenty of examples of religious wars throughout time, or resource wars. The funniest one was the one where, or not the funniest one, but I always thought it was interesting when they had big wars over resources like salt. Back before they had refrigeration, salt was a hot commodity. People would fight over that. Yep. Like, wow, I'm glad we're past that.
Now it's oil.
I'm glad we're past that. All right, so to wrap up this evening here, we're going to wrap it up with our favorite section of the show. Do you know what our favorite section of the show? Have you seen our show lately?
I haven't seen it lately. But
All right, so we got a new segment. It's called the Phobismist.
Okay.
All right, it's a combination of the word phobe, ism, and ist.
Okay.
And all it is it's us educating the fine folks out there how they should be offended over everything. And we take these mundane objects, these mundane things that you wouldn't think would be offensive,
All right.
and we tell people how they should be offended.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna let you hop in on this one here. I'm gonna show it here in just a minute. I'm gonna roll the intro.
Phobismist.
Alrighty, and on today's episode of the Phobismist, we're gonna talk about urinals and why urinals are super offensive. You wanna take this one? Why do you think?
I got a feeling this is gonna be a good one.
Why urinals?
Urinals are like I want you I want people to be so convinced that urinals are offensive that next time they go use one, if they use them, they're gonna look at that and say, I can't even.
So you got to come up with something that's like what?
Right now, off the top of my head, right, the only thing I could think of a urinal being offensive to would be a transgender male.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about
That's
that.
the first thing.
So they haven't quite got the equipment down there. They want to be like the guys, but they can't. They go in the room and they're like, I got to use this little sit-down potty over here.
Oh, yeah,
guys.
they go to the women's restroom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's not good. Yeah, it makes it really difficult.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
right.
So
that's an outrage.
I'm a little offended because if you ever notice that all urinals are white, why can't they be black?
They are
Why can't
all
they be
white.
brown?
No shit. I'll talk about white privilege, dude. Holy shit, man, you're blowing my mind right now.
I mean, seriously, think about that. I've never seen a brown urinal. I have never seen a black urinal. They've always been white.
No yellow ones. hey, and the little soap thing in the bottom of it, the little refresher, it's always pink.
I've seen blue ones.
Oh
I've seen
yeah,
blue ones.
I've seen the blue ones. So yeah.
Okay, so that's the wrong angle.
But what about
white
for
urinals.
people that are like vertically challenged? You got some people like yourself that are short, or some people like me that are tall.
Oh no, that's been handled. They got the short ones. They got the ones all the way at the floor.
But there's only one of them.
No, well, usually, but sometimes I've gone into ones where it's all the way on the floor, and I'm low enough to the floor, but when I pee in there, it's sprinkling all over my damn shins.
Oh well.
And I'm short enough that I'm getting it on my hands. I mean, thank goodness for hand sanitizer, right? No, I was sitting there thinking that this was offensive to women because women couldn't stand up to pee. So to put them in the men's restroom only, it's very sexist. Like, this should be something that either no men get or women get also. Like, this should be a universal thing in all restrooms. We don't want to have separate restrooms.
So okay, so then how do you propose that they're going to use that in a women's bathroom?
Check it out. We've already been through this. We've already had separate restrooms for blacks and whites. Okay, why do we have separate restrooms for men and women?
Well, I
have a
12-year-old daughter. I like to beg differently.
Hear me out.
Because if some dude's coming in there using the bathroom and I'm not in there, we're gonna have
Look,
problems.
and that sounds just like a racist back in the day trying to.
I don't give a shit what it sounds like.
That if it's racist to have separate blacks and white restrooms, then it's sexist to have separate men and women's restrooms. Hands down. I'm sorry.
Well,
I win.
How do you have hands down?
No, I win.
No, that's not possible.
I use sexism.
I have to take it.
I do too. I do too. But we're all pretending. Remember, we're pretending to be outraged over this. All right, so check it out. Some men know how to do it right. Like when they stand up to pee, they stand up.
That's a good one.
I didn't see that one coming. At least you don't have to worry about seeing the sides of each other's penises either.
You know why this is a big thing? I seen a sign. It was a meme that was showing all the different, because it was like in an Asian restroom, showing all the different ways people aren't supposed to pee in the thing. Like it was showing like different ways, like people were peeing over their top of their head.
That's skill right there.
So they were doing this because that was one of the ways that was not shown on the sign. So they're like, oh, we'll just do it this way.
Jesus, I don't think I would want my hand on the floor.
All right, so I think I have a solution. I think I have a solution. You were asking how women can stand up to pee. I have a solution.
Oh, I've seen these.
Yeah, we've got this fancy little device that women can like slide right in your pants, and you can stand up and go wherever you want. Like that's amazing. It's like a little penis prosthetic you can just slap on. Going about you, but that's gonna be
the
so
sad
gross.
part is somebody made millions off of that little contraption.
I'm sure. Matt, I think I want one of these just so it looks like I've got, more girth than. Just kidding. All right, y'all. Well, if you don't have anything else to add tonight, I think that's a good way to wrap up right there.
Yeah.
Well, I sure appreciate y'all. If y'all want to be a guest on the show and come hang out in studio and you're close enough to us, we'll be glad to pull you up a chair, pull you up a microphone. Head on over to unframeofmind.com and let us know what you want to talk about, or just hit me up at unframeofmind@gmail.com and let us know what you want to talk about. And until next time, we'll be live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time.
All right. Peace out.
All right.